I think this is something where we face the tension between these two things all the time. We do it for our clients who really want us to be like risk takers and get great results, but then at the same time, they want to be as efficient as possible. They want us to use their budget in the best way possible, and then we do it when we're leading the organization. So I thought this would be a really good topic for us to discuss. It's based off of Blair Enns. He has an Innoficiency Principle. I'll read it just to be like very straight as to what it is because he wrote it very nicely. And it says, Innoficiency Principle states that innovation and efficiency are mutually opposable goals. In any reasonable functioning organization, one cannot be increased without the other decreasing. So for me, since I'm super visual, I look at these things as like a seesaw. And on one end is innovation, on the other end is efficiency. And like there's that tension between those two things. So just to like toss us out there to get us started, why does this matter? Why does this whole thing matter? And like why should a CMO even care about this topic?
If we were to summarize like our core problem in helping solve client challenges, the biggest challenge I face is being asked to do both those things on a constant basis. And a very clear understanding of which is the priority, and they are competing when it comes down to delivering their results that they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, what about you? Is that something that you feel like you're facing?
It's interesting that you say the seesaw because one thing goes down, the other thing goes up. I could see that illustration, but the way that I think about it is a time and place for everything. So I think companies have not only the opportunity but the obligation to innovate, or they're just going to become irrelevant because so many things are changing the environment around you. To Mallory's point, so much is changing with technology. And so if you just sit there and think that whatever your current offering is going to be relevant forever without putting any energy into innovating, and just try to only focus on being super efficient, pretty soon you won't matter anymore. And at the same time, when you do come up with something that could be very innovative or very creative or very breakthrough that would disrupt somebody, once you get that all sorted out, once you introduce that to the world, then you have to deliver that service or that product. And so there's a time to be efficient at that point, right? And so why can't they live together is what I would ask. And as a creative professional, of course, I'm gonna slant a little more towards I want to innovate all day long, but look, I get it. You know, there's all kinds of opposing forces saying drive the costs down.
Yeah, I think something that Blair talked about, which I found really interesting in his article, but also in the podcast that I listened to, is that it's not that they can coexist. There's a right time and a place. I think there's truth to that. It's when the problem occurs when you don't understand that when you can't seek both at the same time. So when you're in the time of innovation, you will be inefficient. And when you're in the time of efficiency, innovation will take a back seat. That there is a time for each one that you can like turn the dial up and then turn the dial back down, but that both can't be dialed up at the same time. And I think that's what I'm hearing, Mallory, from you, is that oftentimes it's the prioritization that clients or, even coworkers or peers that we have struggle with if you're running the business or if you're making the decision on the marketing plan, is that I can't prioritize between those two. I want them both. So I guess a follow-up would be like when we think of brands that are known for being efficient brands or brands that are known for being innovative brands, what are some brands that come top of mind? And I know I asked two questions there at once. So when we think of brands that are innovative, what are some of those brands that come to mind?
Yeah, I would say ones that I know these things can't live together, but for me, the brands that I think of from both efficiency and an innovation perspective are Amazon. So Amazon is totally synonymous with efficiency for people because we think, we order the thing, it comes in immediately, but then you think about all the innovation that took place to actually get them there. Exactly. That's the real crux of how I think about Amazon, because you think about it in terms of all of the logistic back-end information that had to take place from an information architecture, and then product fulfillment, logistics, all the things that happen to make it be able to come to you immediately. So we only think about them in terms of efficiency, but think about all the innovation that led to that point of getting to efficiency with the outcome. And I think what's interesting about Amazon is that they have such a devotion to their customers. Like everything they do is about their customer, which is how we preach to our clients, how they can best support their marketing efforts, right? Be customer-centric, be customer first. That's what's going to sell your product, regardless of what it is. But Amazon does that. That's core to their brand. That's how they speak about themselves. And whether you're talking about Amazon, the fulfillment side, Amazon Web Services, any of their technology pieces, they have carved out separately and with separate goals of operations around innovative parts of the business. What are we going to spend? How do we manage this section where we're innovating? And then how do we manage the sales, the products, the logistics? All of those things happen independently so that they can both focus on the areas that they're meant to deliver without having those competing interests. And at the top line, right, they're all meant to drive sales, but they have found a way to carve out those two pieces of the business to be really successful. I also think there's other brands where we think about innovation, and I love the Netflix example because it's so interesting to me, right? They were the first ones on the market. Everyone at this table went to Blockbuster on Friday nights and picked out their movies.
The DVD arrives after that.
Right. And then you move to the space where you order online and everyone gets their DVD in the mail, and you think, this is so innovative. Like, who would have thought you didn't have to go to the video store? And then you get to this state where
going to the video store was super fun.
Oh, it was amazing. And getting the candy and the popcorn, that was the whole thing. And then Friday nights as teenagers,
and then that movie was out that you had your heart set on.
Oh, you had to wait for it to come. There was also just a really great thing about that, but I digress. But
also sitting on your couch and going like, this feels really good too. So there's that.
The instant gratification around that is amazing. Yeah. But so we get to the point where we're talking about, okay, now you've mastered getting these movies to people in the mail. They don't have to go to the store. They can choose them ahead of time. They show up at your doorstep. Okay, the next logical step is to have these streaming services available to you. But then they missed the window on so many things. They had the market cornered for a very long time. Like, we think about the number of years they were sitting at the top as an innovator in that space. And then they lost that because they stopped innovating. They started looking at, how do we be efficient? What are the things that matter to keeping our customers engaged and keeping them subscribed to the service? And they forgot about things like advertising, making sure they had money coming in. And then they also built out this amazing production house, but they missed the market on a lot of key things that could have helped them propel the business forward. And now they have a lot of competitors that they're sitting in that same space with.
That is so relevant because that had to be, think about the world before Amazon.
Right.
What it was like, online shopping was quite a bit different. And to even devise, like, remember the first time you heard about Amazon and you came into contact with it, you couldn't even really wrap your mind around what it was. How could they have so many products? You didn't realize that they were a storefront for other people, but sometimes they stock things and sometimes they have warehouses all over the place. And what a model. That took so much ridiculous creative thinking and innovating to even come up with that. And they could have just sat there and said, man, we're just going to keep going with this. But no, guess what? We're going to make a whole entire streaming services or AWS. Like, well, that's a completely different business, for them to get into. But each one of those are lucrative. So what are they going to do next? I promise you they're not going to sit there. They're not the kind of company that's going to sit there and say, let's wring out all the efficiency out of this. They are going to push, and their next thing they're going to come up is going to raise a bunch of eyebrows, I'm sure. It's probably in the middle of being designed right now.
Right.
So it's interesting because you thought of an innovation or you kind of said they fit in both categories. And for me, it's like I actually put them in, like, when I think of them as a brand, I think of them as an efficiency brand. Like, they are known for efficiency. But I think what led them to that efficiency, this is where we were in agreement, is the innovation.
Time and place.
Yes. Yep, exactly. And when I think of other brands that are innovating brands, to me, they are, like, I think disruptor brands are actually pretty synonymous with it, because I think one of the things that a culture of innovation is, what's part of it is creativity and listening to customer feedback. And I think great ideas are born from, like, customers who are experiencing points of pain. Amazon, I think, totally cornered that exactly. I mean, how it's reshaped the way that you order anything online now. I mean, how you don't want to have patience. I mean, COVID kind of did change that a bit, but
it's on the same day.
You see, or a day later, I don't want to pay for shipping. So anything over like $5 for shipping now, I'm like, is that a joke?
Yeah, and that forced brands like Target to do the same thing.
Exactly.
And, right, everybody is delivering
it
really quick.
things.
I have a question for you. So, take away the innovation. Tell me one brand that is just pure efficient without any innovating.
One idea that came to mind for me was actually IKEA. IKEA is a brand to me that's like kind of built, like maybe there's, again, I think that anyone can argue there's a time for innovation and there's a time for efficiency. But I think of IKEA as like twofold as efficient. One, that they have figured out a way to source their materials in such a way that keeps product costs low. So they figured out an efficiency model to run their business. But then on the flip side, their actual product offering, from a brand perspective, they carry that same thinking through because their products are like minimal. Mm-hmm. They save space. they're like no frills. They get
Scandinavian.
the job done. And so for me, it's like when I think of something that's totally synonymous, not only with how they run their business, but also what they deliver, is like I think of IKEA.
Yeah. Walmart, that's another one. But again, they innovated because there were a lot of things with their inventory system. Yes, I'm a nerd. We all know this. That were pivotal at the point in time when they started to be able to bring costs down. So having computerized inventory systems that allowed them to not have waste sitting on shelves or sitting in warehouses when they weren't able to sell it was part of their ability to bring efficiency to the market. So I don't know that you really can get to an efficient point without the innovation to bring you there.
I love to hear that because I was ready for you to ask me the question about what's a brand that is just purely.
So is that why
focused
you
on-
did it before I got a chance to ask you?
You know what? I couldn't even tell you one. I couldn't because you know what? I don't get excited about that, right? So I haven't made an emotional connection to it because they've innovated or they've been super creative, and therefore they haven't hooked me. I'm not interested. I want to be drawn in some way.
So that leads me to like the cultures of these two things. This is something I'm springing this topic on you guys, but which Mark really hates. But this idea of like what are the important points of a culture of innovation and a culture of efficiency. And when I think of a culture of efficiency, if we'll talk about that one first, which is probably, I'm going to guess, a little more in your area of expertise. I'm just kidding. Is that one of them is like, I think with efficiency, you're constantly seeking process improvements. You're looking at the operations of things. You're like, okay, if we do this one way different, it would just make that much quicker, which has the trickle down effect of this. That to me is one of those qualities. Are there any other qualities when you think of a culture of efficiency?
I would say scalability is the biggest piece of it, right? So I've never worked at a Starbucks, but I imagine just based on the way I see it as a customer, every single Starbucks has the exact same layout. So if I take employee A from store A to store B, you can carry over that experience consistently. They know where to find the things that they're looking for to do their job. They know exactly what the labels look like, how things are made. So I think scalability is a huge piece of that, but also there's a lot less of, I guess, using your own level of thinking to contribute to things. So there's an expectation that your value is in the ability to deliver the thing that whatever the widget is that we're creating, the value is in doing that right over and over again versus your thought and your own contribution to how things could move. I don't know. I think that's a big piece of it.
Yep.
I love your engineering brain because you think in a different way than I would about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like what you say does make a lot of sense. You know, when I think about a culture or an environment that is more focused on efficiency than innovation, I think about running in the other direction. Because I'm going to be told that, think about that, right? As a professional creative person, I am paid to tap into ideas that would have come out from my kindergarten self when there was no rules and there was nobody telling me that I shouldn't be thinking that way or doing that way.
Yeah.
And so when you think about breakthrough ideas, it's never a straight line.
Right.
It goes all over the place. You could think about it as hard as you want, and you can try to stay focused on it, and the idea might come, and the idea probably won't come right then, and then you got to go do something else and get distracted. And I guarantee you, if you were to be a fly on the wall watching the whole entire creative team for a couple of days, you would think they're wasting time, but really they're solving creative problems.
Right.
And if you're in an environment that is prizing efficiency over innovation and creativity, that's some people are gonna love that. They're gonna think, man, we're making more money that way, whatever, or we're just making it easier and repeatable. People that are highly innovative and creative are gonna say this is not an environment that's conducive to doing that whatsoever.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also think though what was interesting what you said in that was the problem solving piece, because I also think those are two areas that are still very connected, whether it's a culture of innovation or a culture of efficiency. It's still solving problems. They're just very different problems that need to be addressed within that. So it's a different part of, I guess, not to say that in a culture of efficiency, I should totally take that back and say, it's not to say that your ideas aren't valued, but your ideas are not the thing that's sold. So your ideas are typically around solving the problem of how do we do it better, faster, smarter, versus how do we come up with a new thing. Like, to me, sometimes the new thing is too ambiguous for me to understand, to like wrap my arms around. I need your team to come in and put some guardrails around it so then I can say, okay, I can refine that. Now how do we take and move that forward? Which I think is like, it's funny you call it a seesaw. I kind of think of it as a continuum. And at different points in time, you have to think about where you are on that continuum of innovation versus efficiency,
Yep.
and how you need to scale based on the circumstances that you're sitting in.
It's funny, 'cause Rosie and I had a brief discussion about this beforehand, and I think you were referring to what I was saying is maybe more like a flywheel than a seesaw.
Yeah.
And I think so. Like, I'm always accused of being an Apple fan person, and I've sold myself to them and their whole ecosystem and everything. But you think
Got
about
stock with them too?
You think about the innovation that has to happen and the breakthrough idea of even inventing the iPhone, and then suddenly they're going to design a music service and they're going to tie that to it, and then they just keep building this ecosystem. But at some point, you've got to cross a threshold, and you have to be able to distribute that, and you have to be able to drive the cost down and get them into more hands quicker.
Yeah.
Right. And
So it's not limitless.
time-
There
yeah,
still are guardrails.
Right.
time and place.
Yeah. So when we think about that innovation culture, you started to tap into some of that thinking of like, what are some of those things within innovation culture? Are there any certain qualities that you feel like, better supports that type of thinking?
I think that just a general understanding of what you're trying to do at that point. So like, the employees come in and they know what they're trying to accomplish and what they're being assigned to. And so like, if I just think about our company, we are a creative marketing agency. We use technology and we use efficiency at times, but we also are trying to use creativity and innovation to solve problems for our clients. And they hire us. If they could do it themselves, they wouldn't hire us. So that attracts a certain kind of person. And they know that they have the support of the leadership of the agency to be able to do that. And so we have created this environment that allows that to flourish versus cutting it off and saying, don't think about that too much, just get it out the door and just be fast. And all we're going to do is just be burn and churn and just get these things out as fast as possible.
Like a versioning house.
Yeah.
There's a time and place for that. That's not us. I mean, right? So
Right.
like, looking at it through our lens, I think those conditions have to be there. And I think there has to be buy-in from the very top level, from the board of directors, from the CEO, that this is the expectations of what we're asking people to do, and it's okay if their journey takes them for a run in the middle of the afternoon because they need their brain to be thinking about something else while they're solving this, because ultimately they're going to come back and they're going to have a whole entire page of things that they can write down.
Right.
It's different than just saying, I need to see you in your seat at your desk, and like, are you touching your keystroke every so many seconds to make sure that you're working?
Think of severance right
Right?
now.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
even know what
exactly.
I'm doing here.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but when I think about the environment has to support that kind of thinking.
Yeah, and I think too, like, one of the interesting points of the article when you read through it is that, like, the concept around freedom to fail, and whether some cultures
that.
support that too, and whether it's a company culture or you're talking about a larger context of, like, one of the things they discuss in the article is around, like, the American culture. It allows you to fail because people forget about your failures later on. Like, they used a bunch of really good examples later. As long as you succeed last, that's the thing they focus on or remember you for at the end. So I think that that's also important, and that's part of what I do think we embrace. And whether it's, solving, there's a lot of ways we look at creativity in an agency, and I think whether it's coming up with the right marketing mix, the right media mix, the right media plan, the right creative solution, like, all those things still have that in common, that there's sometimes gonna be opportunities where you don't hit it out of the park.
Yep.
And that's the flexibility that needs to be provided in the culture for innovation to flourish.
Yeah. Have either of you ever had a client that's allowed you that space?
The space to fail?
Yeah. I'm really curious.
I think
like,
so. I think
like,
you've got clients that are willing to look for the big idea, and they know that you've got to push the boundaries, and you may not come with a singular idea that spectacularly fails, but you might along the journey come forward with a couple of ideas. And
I asked that question because there's so much pressure on CMOs today. CMOs today are now, like, at a different level. They are they're at that business table now, whereas I don't think that always was. And so when they're at the table and the leadership of the organization that they're in, they're looked at for, like, results now. I want to understand exactly what I'm getting for the money that I'm giving you to do. And, with tracking and all the things we can do now, which is all excellent, and sometimes I think that they start to take away the freedom for failure, the freedom for creativity, because it's like, well, now I expect the results because I know that's possible. When it wasn't possible, it seemed like there was a little bit more space to try things.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that means we shouldn't track those things.
No, I mean,
I just think it's like when it goes back to like the continuum
Right.
or like when is the time and when and I think that could be a big challenge for clients is to understand like, hey, when do I give them the opportunity to say I'm going to try these different things, and at what point is that done? And I'm like, okay, now we just need to go after and get efficient.
get the thing. I think that's one of the interesting points of when you were saying that, Mark, about the fact that clients let you come up with creative ideas and it's okay to fail on those. I think this is where it's really interesting because I think the second half of the marketing continuum gets a lot of pressure for performance.
It
And
does.
so there's a lot of leeway to say, let's have a big idea and let's have creative be the thing that moves us forward and we're totally invested with that big idea. But then at the end of the day, they're like, but how's that thing performing? And
Ideation to execution.
yes, and
right?
it's not, and it doesn't continue across the same level of expectation. So big idea, they're all on board with that. Then we get to the delivery of it. But that big idea, maybe it was never designed to actually deliver the end performance because it's a brand concept. And that's great. And what they really do need is brand support. But they don't really have the patience to sit and wait for that to come full funnel
Yeah.
to build whatever direct response they're looking for. So I think it's really interesting that you ask that because I think sitting in my seat and owning the product areas of or departments that I support right now, like that is a huge challenge because there's not a lot of leeway for that. And then when we go back and we have to say like the creative isn't working for this particular aspect of the campaign, it becomes this like deep conversation and the clients are still feeling really unclear on why that upper funnel big idea isn't driving the thing at the bottom.
Has
and
to translate
it doesn't
somehow.
translate, yeah.
I think the opportunity for creative and the people that are thinking of these ideas to more tightly collaborate with the technology and the media people that are delivering the ideas is something where we have moments where we do that well, and there are moments where we could more deliberately force those collisions of thinking. But I think that's a really important thing to think about because there is pressure. There's no doubt. Like, what's the tenure of a CMO? It's not very long.
It's less
I
than
don't think.
it's between 2 and 3 years now.
Yeah.
And so if the board of directors is watching the business not perform the way that they think it is, but here's the thing: if they sit there and be boring all the time and they don't lean into
There's a
innovating
risk in
and
not
ideas,
innovating.
Right.
They have got to differentiate themselves from their competitors,
Yeah.
and in order to do that, they've got to find that void in the market, and that often takes a lot of innovation and creativity
Right.
to find that to bring that point of differentiation forward.
So when we think about I'm listening to this conversation, what do I do next? Like what's something that I need to think of? And then if you know, or what is something that Mark, that after hearing today Mallory's point of view, my point of view, is there something different that you would do as you move forward?
This conversation has reinforced what I came in after I read this article, which is there's a time and place for it. And I think if you're asking what a brand or what a CMO should be doing, they should be trying to discover where those opportunities are to innovate and to not get stagnant and not become irrelevant, and then to find the areas of when do you cross that threshold where it's time to then start thinking about efficiencies. There's no reason why they can't do both. Maybe not at the exact same time, right? But otherwise, what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to that brand? It's going to become irrelevant, and we're not going to be talking about it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think it's about understanding when the right time and place is for the efficiency versus understanding where the opportunities are for innovation. And I think brands need to understand and embrace like what part of the budget. I don't know. I love the Amazon model of breaking things apart and saying like, okay, what amount of the budget are we willing to invest in innovation, or what part of the budget are we willing to invest in your potential prospects thinking of you innovatively? And so that money has to be looked at from a marketing perspective very differently than how we would look at the money that's driving efficiency.
Do you think you'll ask clients that in a different way now after this conversation?
Sure.
Have I had a
glad
positive
to.
impact?
You have always. Every day, Rosie Staff.
No, but for real, are you gonna do?